It is that time of the year again in the world of motorsports. The 24 Hours of Daytona is around the corner. It is almost here, and of course I am very excited to see another run of the Rolex 24 and the 2021 WeatherTech IMSA SportsCar Series Championship. I'm very excited, as you can tell. Got my Corvette gear, and man, oh man, I'm always looking forward to that race every single year. And there have been a lot of interesting, iconic moments in the Rolex 24. There have been incredible stories, but there's this one story that not a lot of motorsports fans or sports car fans can recall or don't talk about it. There's this one story back in 1984 that, let's just say there was a monster in that race. I found this incredible story on Racing Reference, so shout out to NASCAR Man for posting that story 2 years ago. All credit goes to the original. And what is the story about? Let's find out. This is A Killer in the Race, 1984, 24 Hours of Daytona. On February 4th, 1984, over 240 race car drivers were gathered on pit road waiting to begin the 24 Hours of Daytona. The start of the event was televised live by TBS with Ken Squire calling out the names of drivers to watch. The race was filled with past and future Indy 500 champions like AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, and Bobby Rahal. There were NASCAR drivers like Terry Labonte and Tim Richmond. And near the front of the field were road racing legends like Haywood, David Hobbs, and Bell. But a monster was amid these icons. Within 2 months, a driver in the race would be on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, having gone on a nationwide spree of murder and sexual crimes. The manhunt for Daytona's 52nd place finisher would be the largest in FBI history when AJ Foyt and Mario Andretti raced past Christopher Wilder. No one could have imagined the horrors he would cause. Christopher Wilder was born in Australia in 1945 to U.S. military parents. Nearly his entire life was filled with problems he caused. In 1962, he pled guilty to involvement in a gang rape. He was given a probation and electric shock therapy. He was married for 1 week in 1968 before his wife fled from him. In 1969, Wilder moved to Boynton Beach, Florida, where he formed a Sawtell construction company and became very successful as an electrical contractor. But through the 1970s, Wilder was charged several times with various sexual crimes. The Predator would pose as a magazine photographer looking for models as a way to lure young, attractive women to him. In 1982, he was arrested in Australia for a similar crime. After posting bail, his trial there was delayed until April 1984. The FBI psychologist later claimed Wilder was somewhat psychotic and unable to control his urges. Court-ordered therapy sessions seemed to help, but some people who knew Wilder remembered him talking about having blackouts, periods where he couldn't remember what he did or where he was. When Wilder began his crime spree in 1984, it came as a shock to his friends. Wilder was charming, went on a lot of dates with women, and as many people described him as a perfect gentleman. He had a dark side, but he hid it very, very well. While living in Florida with a large disposable income, Wilder developed an interest in road racing. He would take women on dates to racetracks and offered to pay some of his girlfriends to attend racing schools. Later reports stated he drove in 5 amateur races in 1982. Wilder made his professional racing debut in the IMSA GTU class in 1983. In that year's 12 Hours of Sebring, he drove a Porsche 911 with Jack Reinerson and Van McDonald. The car was owned by Reiner, and the trio drove it to a 27th place finish, 10th in the GTU class. Throughout 1983, Wilder and Reinerson co-drove in 2 more races. They finished 26th at Atlanta, 7th in the GTU class, and in 40th at Daytona in a season-ending race in November, 14th in the GTU class. Reinerson quit racing at the end of the 1983 season. The following year, Wilder had to go off of his own. To begin the 1984 season, he entered a Porsche he owned in the 24 Hours of Daytona. Wilder's co-drivers were fellow Florida drivers Dennis Franceschi and Buzz McCall. McCall later created American Equipment Racing, a team that won numerous Trans Am championships in the 1990s with Scott Sharp and Jack Baldwin. Driving a sinister-looking black Porsche 911 with red trim, the trio qualified 66 in a field of 82 cars. When the long race began, the car completed only 212 laps, and they were scored 14th in the GTU class. They finished 52nd overall, ahead of drivers such as Bobby Rahal, Mario Andretti, and Michael Andretti, and Wally Dallenbach Jr. The second event of the IMSA schedule was the Budweiser Grand Prix of Miami on Saturday, February 25th, 1984. The GTU race was a brief 26-lap event and all cars only had one driver. Driving solo, Christopher Wilder qualified 21st and finished 17th, one lap behind race winner Chris Cord. It was immediately after this race that Wilder began his nationwide killing spree. The following day were the IMSA GTO and GTP races. When Wilder returned to the track on Sunday, he found his first victim. 23-year-old Rosario Gonzalez was working as a model at the track on Sunday, distributing aspirin samples to spectators. The track was full of advertising women that day. In fact, Maria Maples, future wife of former President Donald Trump, was also at the Miami Grand Prix working as a model for Hawaiian Tropic. Wilder previously met Gonzalez in October 1982 when he photographed her after winning the Miss Mannequin pageant. At the IMSA race in February 1984, Wilder recognized her again and witnesses saw him talking to Gonzalez at the track. Later that day, she disappeared without picking up her paycheck. Her body was never found. On March 5th, 1984, Wilder abducted his former girlfriend, Elizabeth Kenyon. They had remained friends, although at the time of her abduction, Kenyon was dating the son of ABC Sports announcer Jim McKay. Days before her disappearance, she told her parents that Wilder claimed he could get her a job at Miss Budweiser at the Miami Grand Prix, but did not take the offer. She too has never been found. Kenyon's parents hired a private investigator who was able to connect both disappearance to Wilder. The investigator brought the story to the police and the media. In a very odd scenario, Wilder's team still competed in the 12 Hours of Sebring on March 24th, despite a nationwide manhunt for its killer car owner. With Wilder's name still on the entry list and still officially listed as car owner, his Porsche 911 was raced by Van McDonald and Dennis Franceschi. I hope I got that last name right. It is unclear how his crew found out about the arrest warrants. Initially, it seemed that Wilder didn't show up to the track. Speaking later, the killer's co-driver couldn't believe the kind man they knew could be capable of such horrors. Van McDonald said, quote, "If it's all true, he's the biggest Jekyll and Hyde I've ever seen. I can't believe the same guy I knew could ever do anything like that. He's a super gentleman, generous to a fault." Fellow racer and close friend Vicky Smith was also stunned. She said, quote, "He would always open the door and offer you his hand to help you out, like a classic gentleman from 100 years ago," end quote. She told the UPI saying, quote, "The type of guy you bring home to your parents. You always have elegant time when you went out with Chris Wilder," end quote. Sebring is a tough race physically, and 1984 was a tougher mentality because of the news. Even tougher because of the police presence. A handful of federal agents went through the paddock and questioned drivers and crews about Wilder. Have you seen him? Do you know where he might go? When was the last time you spoke to him? For most in the IMSA paddock, race morning was the first time they heard of the manhunt. At the time, Wilder was only wanted for 2 disappearances and a kidnapping. He wasn't nationally news story yet. Amazingly, Wilder's team was quite competitive despite their dark cloud hanging over them. McDonald and DeFranceschi put aside the surroundings and finished 4th in the GTU class, 14th overall. After the race, the team loaded up the tools and drove the Porsche onto the trailer with thoughts on their mind of where their owner was and what he was doing. Unfortunately, it was about to get worse. Thousands of miles away, Wilder continued his terror. On March 26, he killed Suzanne Logan in Kansas. He then abducted 18-year-old Cheryl Bonaventura in Colorado on March 29th. He was believed to have killed her on March 31st in Utah. FBI Los Angeles Bureau Chief Richard Brett believed he may even remain in the area for the IMSA Riverside Grand Prix at the end of April. Brett said in a press conference on April 5th, quote, "The Long Beach Grand Prix and the upcoming Riverside Grand Prix are the kind of events that attract the Wilder. His zigzag patterns linked to Southern California. He's been in Georgia, Texas, Colorado, and was last seen in Las Vegas. There's a good possibility he is there," end quote. While the FBI was searching in California, Wilder remained in the mountain area. On the day of the Long Beach Grand Prix, Wilder kidnapped 17-year-old Michelle Korfman from the 17 magazine modeling competition in Las Vegas. Her body was discovered in Southern California a month later. With the death count rapidly climbing, Wilder was added to the FBI's top 10 most wanted list on April 5, 1984. In a press conference, they said he was their most wanted man due to the danger he posed. Reports said that the manhunt for Wilder was the largest in the FBI's existence. To help attract more victims, Wilder kidnapped a 16-year-old girl in Southern California and used her to appear less threatening. Together, they drove back across the country and abducted a woman in Indiana. Wilder stabbed the woman and left her in the woods in Penn Yan, New York. She survived and told police he was heading for Canada. On April 12th, Wilder killed 33-year-old Beth Dodge in Victor, New York. Later that day, he brought his 16-year-old kidnapped victim to Logan Airport in Boston and bought her a plane ticket back to Los Angeles. All by himself, Wilder raced to Canada. Wilder's face was everywhere. News programs showed a videotape he made for a dating service. His mugshot was in every police station in America. With a nationwide search for Wilder in full effect, people began to recognize his bearded face and a large forehead.
On Friday, April 13th, 1984, Wilder stopped for gas in the tiny town of Colebrook, New Hampshire, about a dozen miles from the Canadian border. While he filled the tank, he casually asked an attendant about the paperwork that might be needed to cross the border. Two state troopers, Wayne Fortier and Leo Jellison, spotted Beth Dodge's car. They, like almost every police department in the country, had been told to be on the lookout for the Firebird and for a man of Wilder's description. Jellison asked Wilder if he could speak with him. Wilder leaped into the Firebird and grabbed his .357 Magnum. In the struggle, the weapon went off. Officer Jellison was shot in the chest. He would live. But Christopher Wilder would not. The bullet that wounded Officer Jellison first passed through Wilder. It pierced his heart, killing him instantly. Wilder's cross-country reign of terror ended with a 10th death. His own.
After a 6-week cross-country crime spree, after killing 8 women and raping 12 women starting at Florida on February 26, 1984, Christopher Wilder would shoot himself and a trooper. Since his death, he has also been considered a suspect in many unsolved murders, including the unsolved 1965 murder of 2 teenage girls in his native Sydney, Australia, where he had lived during the same period. Wilder was cremated in Florida, leaving a personal estate worth more than $7 million. In June of 1986, a court-appointed abbreviator ruled that the after-tax balance was to be divided among the family of his victims. Christopher Wilder is known today as the Beauty Queen Killer. On the motorsports side, race fans and sports car racing fans in the racing world will know him as a race car driver who was pretending to be a perfect gentleman who turned out to be a killer. While he had 8 victims in 1984, his total numbers of killing people is still unknown to this day. Wilder has emerged as the #1 suspect in the 1965 Wanda Beach murders, one of Australia's biggest mysteries. In 1968, Wilder's ex-wife told police she believed he was the killer. However, authorities were unable to question him before he moved to the United States. Improvements in DNA testing may soon give definitive answers. Everywhere he went, Wilder ruined lives and stained communities. Just by competing in the 24 Hours of Daytona, Christopher Wilder may be the darkest moment in IMSA Racing's rich history. Christopher Wilder was 39 years old. Hey everybody, this is Ian Perez, aka Ian Perez 48 here. I really hope you guys enjoyed this new episode of Racing Stories in honor of Rolex 24 coming up this weekend. And ever since I heard about the story, I wanted to make a video about it. And of course, credit goes to the original. Credit goes to NASCAR Man for making this amazing story. Very interesting, very dark. I know that's what my series has mainly been. I never expected it, but hey, it's a racing historical moment and a historical moment around the world. If you guys made it this far into this video, if there's any sources that I've missed, if there's something that I got wrong and all that stuff about IMSA back in the 80s and the murder stuff from Christopher Wilder, please be respectful and feel free to help me out in the comments below. A lot of help would be appreciated. Aside from that, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Comment, like, and subscribe for more content. Comment, like, and subscribe. Turn on my YouTube notifications if you want more episodes of Racing Stories. Don't forget to follow my social accounts in the link in the description below. If you guys want to read the story yourself, it's in the description as well on Racing Reference. Again, all credit goes to NASCAR Man. In the meantime, I want to say thank you guys so much for supporting E Nation. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. This is Ian Perez 48 signing off. Enjoy the 2021 Rolex 24 at Daytona.